Hello, my name is Robert Cibis. I'm very proud, I'm very happy to sit here with Professor Dr. Amitav Banerjee. Together with him, we will question a perception, a vision of the dominating narrative in terms of public health. Because Professor Banerjee is a professor in community medicine and, of course, with that, specialized in epidemiology. And he worked in various fields. He knows about epidemic procedures, he knows about prevention, he knows how to read numbers and statistics, and he can give a bit of reason into these narratives of fear. So this is what we all want to do at Open Media. We want to help understand the world. So please explain how the corona crisis has been perceived by you in the beginning, and what was your first impression and how did it evolve?
Thank you, Robert. And I remember I am very happy, first of all, to interact with this Oval Studio from Germany.
Thank you.
And in fact, this pandemic started in, I think, 2019, December. And just before that, I was gone to a university in Malaysia. I was just giving a guest lecture on recent trends in public health. And I just ended the lecture with saying, now we have controlled communicable disease, now we have to only deal with non-communicable disease. And by the time I came back to India in December, there was a news about the Wuhan virus. And then there were, in January, by the time January and all, there were a lot of viral pictures of mayhem in China. Things getting locked down, and there was a panic. And of course, we were very, very, in distant India, we never thought that it will spread so fast. Then from China, the next country to be involved was Thailand. Thailand did not have much of a problem, but it went to Italy after that. And there were mass deaths in Italy. And that, I think, triggered the panic. The draconian measures, China, they locked down the Hubei district, large number of population locked down. This was unprecedented in public health history. And when China locked down Hubei district, the world media criticized China. It said this is unscientific, this is authoritarian, this is draconian. Even one of the WHO rep also mentioned it. I have got it on record. But when it went to Italy, and the media took over, because in Italy it hit the nursing homes, it hit the elderly people. It had a very elderly population, and because of large number of casualty, Italy was the second country which had the lockdown. And then it spread to other European countries, and this one country after the other, they used this draconian measures, lockdown, then other measures which came to be known as COVID appropriate behavior, like social distancing, mask, and other things. And it is very fascinating. I read somewhere that these measures did not have any evidence. The only evidence it had was based on a high school project of a girl student in 2015. She did some computer project. If there is a outbreak of influenza, whether the lockdown will work, social distancing work. So it was a simulated computer project, and that she happened to be a daughter of a USA scientist. And then they used this model based on computer projection of a high school girl.
No.
I will send
Here
you.
in India, you mean?
No, not in India. It was America. In America.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I will send you the reference. I will send you the.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I will send you the link, and then that is about it. And then one country after the other, in the March, the China declared it a pandemic of, it declared it a global pandemic, and one country after the other outdid the measures. India went on to one of the largest lockdown of almost 140 crore population with a 4 hours notice. and that caused a lot of collateral harm. That caused people losing their job, people have to walk miles on foot in March, and of course that was in March. Then April, May, and this was, I think, this thing was on a very, very amateurish methods they applied, as if initially the purpose of lockdown was 2 weeks. In most of the countries they said 2 weeks lockdown so as not to overwhelm the hospital services. Afterwards it kept on prolonging. Then there was a promise of a vaccine coming, and they thought ki once the vaccine comes then everything will be fine.
So you've been critical from the beginning.
Yeah, I was critical. And another thing which I found very peculiar in this pandemic as a epidemiologist, like asymptomatic cases just on the basis of one test, that was RT-PCR, which is a very, very sensitive test. It can pick up even dead particles. The virus has come or gone, nobody knows. The person may not be infectious. And in a medicine, firstly, person has symptoms, then the test, then the diagnosis. Here, the test is done, and then the person is labeled as a case, and then you start contact tracing. So these measures are very good at the start of a pandemic, in the beginning, where you can contain it. But once it has spread across the globe, then in the different countries, it has spread in the general population. These measures are not cost effective. They are very resource intensive, they are costly, they create panic, they just increase the case numbers. And you will be surprised to know this was started on one case report published in New England Journal of Medicine, that one lady went from, I think, China or some Asian countries to Germany or USA, and she was asymptomatic, she infected others. So just on basis of one case report.
That is very interesting. I know the study. It has been done by Charité in Berlin. And it's really an interesting study because, first of all, it's wrong. The lady had strong symptoms and took a lot of medication to contain them.
Yeah, that came out later.
Yeah. Secondly, it is very surprising that a team of researchers went from Berlin to Munich to test a woman coming from Wuhan who had a cold, while at the same day, about 100,000 people in Germany had a cold. Why would they test not somebody in Berlin? Why would they use this test, which has never been used, to test a woman who is like 800 kilometers away in a smaller town than the big town of Berlin? It is a surprising study because it feels like you want to find this and not that,
As if you have decided that this lady will go from here. She is asymptomatic, first of all, as per that time, when it was first published, she had no symptoms, she goes there. Then you have to take care of the asymptomatic also. They have to poke in the throat and nose to find out.
Sure.
So that is something which has never been done in public health history.
Yes.
And later it was found that she had symptoms and she was taking medication. But the initial publicity was enough to put the fear in the minds of people.
So this even has been a reference in India and in Malaysia, this very study?
These references are like this. Like the WHO says, the CDC says that there is asymptomatic spread. All India, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, all countries follow the WHO guidelines. They, without doing their own studies, they just follow the WHO guidelines. So whatever initial impact has been done, and it is another very peculiar thing in this pandemic is like usually you quarantine, so-called quarantine or restrict the movement of people who are sick.
Yes.
Here you have put the healthy people, young people, healthy people, and anyway, initially fear was justified, I would say, first couple of months, because when they took the data from Italy, and one of the published paper in Lancet had estimated the case fatality rate of 20%. So 20% is quite serious. I mean, anybody would be panicked, 20% mortality. But later it was based on the hospital cases, who are serious cases, elderly cases, and the mean age of death was 80 years, very elderly population. And based on that type of false inputs, certain models, Neil Ferguson models and other models, and the projection was there will be millions of deaths in, say, UK, in other countries. And so that type of panic which was generated, it never subsided throughout the pandemic. And one of the principles of public health pandemic management is one should mitigate panic. Here it was opposite. Everybody wanted to increase the panic level. And later, in fact, within the first 3-4 months only, the California University, Stanford people did some studies, sero surveys in California, Jay Bhattacharya, John Yonitz. So they found a large number of asymptomatic spread in the community, which increased the denominator. And their estimate of the infection fatality rate was 0.3%. 0.27 or 0.3%, because so many people got infected, so many landed up in hospital. Most of them, 80% and other things, were asymptomatic cases.
And even this has been based on the testing, which includes
antibody tests. They did some antibody tests. That exactly. Is the antibodies. They had like these antibodies. They capture the past infection. RT-PCR is supposed to capture the present infection, whatever it is, whether it is just a RT-PCR or some nucleic acid particle lying there. So this was, but that study was very much criticized and all that. So anyway, that was somewhere. But very early in the pandemic, we knew that the fatality was not as much as initially projected, firstly. Secondly, even data from China and other data from other countries, they found almost 1,000-fold difference in the risk according to the age. Children were at almost negligible risk. Elderly were at above 80-year-old person, and an 80-year-old person, there was 1,000-fold difference in risk.
I understand this. So from the beginning on, you've been very methodological.
Yeah.
You're trying to put numbers into context.
Yes.
And you want to show maybe some of your work?
Yes.
I will open the computer here. Just a moment.
So this, as I was saying, this another thing, like initially only we plotted the data in somewhere May 2020, and we because with that when we came to know that it is then we thought that each country will have different mortality. We took the mortality from COVID as the end point, because cases depend on the testing policies, different countries vary. So we postulated that countries with higher median age will have more mortality, and we exactly found that. This was somewhere in May 20. That is per million deaths from COVID. USA, UK, and Sweden, all three digit, 204, 404. Brazil, of course, started with less mortality, but subsequently it caught up. And India, the Asian countries and African countries were having single-digit mortality, 1, 2, 3, and African was the least, 0.3. So initially we thought the age, and then subsequently we had some that it may be the obesity also. That we then took the BMI from the WHO site, median age, and we took this is the median age. Median age of the northern hemisphere was around 40, except for Brazil, which is 30. And the median age of Asian countries were 27, 23, except for Japan. Japan is an outlier. Japan, by median age 48, it is more than even the northern Caucasians. So they are the most aged, but they have very low mortality to start with, 3. And the African countries similarly had median age in the 20s and around 20.
Yes, but I mean, you have to consider that a COVID death person is a person who has a positive COVID-19 test, basically. So if you have a heart attack and you have a positive test, you're in that statistic.
This is again a first time in public health.
Yes.
Death certification.
And then if you don't make a test, you're not in the statistic. Even you might have been dying from a respiratory disease, but if in a country where they do less testing, they have less cases. So what I wanted to say is, how reliable are these numbers? You know.
How will you believe the numbers? That's why I have not taken the cases. Yeah. The most accurate we can take is the death from COVID. And as you rightly said, a person may die of a heart disease or some other comorbidity, and that person incidentally has a positive RT-PCR. Yeah. And he or she is labeled as a COVID death. In fact, there are reports that in USA, a gunshot person dying of gunshot wound had a RT-PCR positive, has been labeled as a COVID death. So this has again, the death certification has never been distorted like this in anyone. Like we are carrying thousands of viruses and bacteria in our throat, nose, skin. Yes. I can pick up a staphylococcal, I can pick up a staphylococcal from my nose, streptococcus from my throat, and I can say, why not it's a streptococcal death?
Exactly. Because this is also one point, if you just test on one thing, even if the person dies with a respiratory disease, maybe it was influenza B, which was stronger than
more people died with COVID rather than due to COVID. There is a published paper on it. In fact, initially CDC also had given it, then it retracted. It found that only 6% of people are directly attributed to the virus. 96% had 3 or 4 comorbidities. So that is one thing, and therefore these things are a lot of confounders, because as you age, you have got diabetes, you have got heart disease, you have got so many. Person is mortal. You see, even John Ionitz, he has mentioned in one paper that even a person who is elderly, who is frail, who is bedridden, even if she or he is infected with a common cold virus, the mortality is 8%. A normal common cold virus can kill a person who is bedridden and frail. So this is killing 5% now, or 20%, whatever. So it is behaving like any other virus. And therefore, the death rate was 1,000 times more in the 80-year-old compared to a 8-year-old. So in epidemiology, we use this type of risk stratification. The people with higher risk are to be protected, focus protection, and people with lower risk can carry out the normal. And another thing we noted was the overweight. So if you see the northern hemisphere, the overweight is around 60%. And two outliers are there. Japan is got a very high age, but a very low overweight percentage. And similarly, the African countries, except for South Africa. South Africa is almost 53%. So among the African continent, South Africa has got the highest mortality. Asian continents, it is Japan has, in spite of a higher age, because of its low obesity, it has got a low mortality. Even this is first initially we did, and then this tabulation is after in February latest. There also it is in 3 digits. And the Western countries are having higher obesity, higher mortality, higher age. And Brazil is also teaches us lessons, because Brazil is having a lower age, 33, but its obesity is high because of new developing economy. So it is, obesity is a bigger risk factor, almost as good as age. Because of course obesity per se, they say it affects the respiratory function. Secondly, obesity can be a surrogate marker of diabetes and hypertension, because these are population level data. So these are just showing a bird's eye view. This can just raise hypotheses or questions, but these are pointing to something. And here last column we have got the vaccination rates. So you see, northern hemisphere are fully vaccinated. And compared to the African continent, hardly any. In fact, in Africa, South Africa has got the highest vaccination, 30%, compared to just 1 or 2% in other countries in Africa. But it has got the highest mortality also. So
from what month are these numbers? Oh, it's from, I see it, mid of February 2020.
This is the latest.
I see, quite recent.
Quite recent. So this the vaccination is not the panacea. Yeah, you see, like in epidemiology, like a game of chess. You have to see all the pieces, the board, the different games are different, countries are different. So vaccination is just one, you may call it a queen, but there are other pieces like obesity, age and other things. So therefore these guidelines, these policies made centrally by WHO, CDC or even, and India is a very vast country. Each country, urban, rural differences are there. So each country, the epidemiology, the dynamics are different. So these policies should be at the local level, rather than now this WHO is trying to bring out a pandemic treaty. I think it would be quite a disastrous thing. I mean, the way, because WHO is sitting at one place and we are sitting at the other end of the world. We have got even the pandemic, this COVID pandemic has shown that the same disease behaves differently, 10 times to 15 to 10 times more mortality compared to the continent, in spite of say lockdown or other measures and other things. Other slide also I have given. These are the, like even in the lockdown policy and all, like Sweden did not have a lockdown, so in the Western country it is having more or less same or even less. Belarus did not have a lockdown, it is having less. So of course very few countries abstained from lockdown, and Sweden never closed school also. So there wasn't any high mortality or morbidity in children.
So, again, I would say maybe they do less testing in Belarus than they do in other countries. So you, isn't it, I mean, how clear is it that you can compare the numbers?
Testing rates are also giving. In the Worldometer data, the testing rates are, Sweden is definitely testing as much as any other country. So I have not included the figure. We have taken the testing rates also. The minimum testing rates per million I have not put, not to clutter the slide.
Yes.
But testing is not much of, except for Japan. Japan did a less test. But the person who is dying of COVID, definitely that is more accurate data than the cases. Cases have always a question mark on the cases. So this is the more European countries and the USA and European countries. Then these are the Asian countries. You see Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was having very less. What is more interesting is countries like India. India is having 56 vaccination coverage. We are having higher deaths, 364. Whereas Pakistan is having less, and you see Bangladesh is having just 37% vaccination coverage, and Bangladesh mortality is much less, 173 compared to 364. So this vaccination coverage at the population level is not showing much impact at the population level.
There's no correlation between vaccination, or it's maybe an opposite correlation, which means that maybe because of vaccination you have more COVID tests.
This requires investigation. This is something, this is a signal. This is a signal. We don't jump to conclusion. This is a signal. But we have to take a pause and investigate further. Before blindly we are going for second booster, third booster, fourth booster. We have got some graphs which shows before vaccination and after vaccination. The cases have peaked, and after some time the deaths have also peaked. So this type of okay, it doesn't prevent transmission, but it reduces the deaths and severe. So the data doesn't show at the population level. It may be at individual level. So because when you are thinking of public health policy, which large amount of investment of money, so you should get the return for your money, because you will be taking away the money from other diseases which are causing more morbidity and mortality, and particularly it applies to poor countries like India, Pakistan or Asian countries, where we have got tuberculosis, where 1400 people die daily from tuberculosis. 2000 children die daily from different preventable causes in India, 2000 children. Here not even 2 child dies from COVID. And we have got dengue, we don't have proper data. Then we have got typhoid, which is the mortality even treated is 3%. Here without treatment survival is 99.5% up to age of 69 years. And as I said, in the Western hemisphere, the infection fatality rate came out to be 0.3%. We had done some sero surveys. In fact, my medical school where I am working, we were given the task of doing a sero survey in a population of 30 lakh or corporation area. And that was after the first wave was ending in 2020. That was in October. We found 35% of the population in that area were having the antibodies. They had had infection. 90% of them were asymptomatic. And in that also there was a class difference. That is very poor people who are living in very congested houses like slums or tenements. They had almost 80-90% seropositivity. They had. And those in affluent societies, they were having 10%, 5%, 15%. So those comprise the 70% of the people are having less exposure and 30% of the people had very high exposure. So when the second wave came, we again followed up and we found those areas which are 80-90%, they were not impacted at all by the second wave. Only 70% affluent people who came out, they thought, because the pandemic came to a halt because these people developed immunity. The lower classes, 30%, 70% were protected. They were working from home. But everybody came out. They thought the pandemic has ended. It was ended because they were staying away and they had developed immunity. When they came out, everybody mixed. And the second wave affected the upper classes more in India. Same thing happened in Mumbai also. The Dharavi slum was heavily invested. Second wave, they were not affected. The upper classes. Same we saw in Pune. And the upper classes in India.
But you're talking about what period? When was it?
2020 was the October we did a survey, and the second wave started somewhere in say April, May it started. In 2021 it started.
But this is when a lot of people have been vaccinated already.
They rolled out the vaccine in January, but by March when the second wave came, less than 7% of our population was vaccinated.
But rather the higher class? Rather the upper class or rather the lower class?
Overall only 7% or...
I know what you mean, but let's just think evil.
No.
So it's an important game. You know, if I do an investigation, I think, what is the best case scenario? What is the worst case scenario? You know, can we maybe see the thing from the wrong side? You know, so when we think evil, as a lot of professors have warned, saying, look, the vaccine can have a reverse effect. It can amplify the impact of the virus. It can have an ADE, you know, autoimmune...
antibody-dependent enhancement.
Exactly.
And that is one thing. And other thing some people had warned is that it can promote mutation.
Yes, exactly. So there are a lot of, you know that I just learned that in the official VERS register, the list of possible side effects is quite long. It's 64,000 different side effects which are noted right now. So it's a long list of things that can happen. But a lot of them are similar to the symptoms of COVID, because there was also the narrative COVID can have, you know, impacts on this and that. It can be different organs. Everything can be COVID. So I am quite critical if we talk about COVID in 2021, even if only 7% of the population has been vaccinated at this time. Who knows? I mean, the numbers. Here we're talking about per million. So if we talk about 7% and every fifth person has a problem, it can have an impact on these numbers. What is your opinion about this? Can it be linked to the vaccination, or is it sure that this correlation is not existent?
India is a very big country, and of course you are right. Another problem with India is that some parts of India may be more vaccinated, others may be less. But I have seen this phenomena of rise in cases and deaths in smaller countries like Sri Lanka.
I see.
Sri Lanka I was following very closely because
tell me, I want to learn. How exactly did it evolve in Sri Lanka?
Sri Lanka was having very less cases per million and very less number of deaths. In fact, 10 times less than India. I was following all the neighbors because I was worried about our country, and I thought the demographics of India's neighbors like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka is more comparable than European, because most of these planners were just adopting the Western models. Yes. So I said these things are different for many reasons. One is of course the obesity and age, and other very important thing I thought was the population density. All countries like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka are 10 times more crowded than the Western countries. Oh, really? So if the natural infection has to spread, which I have seen firsthand in my work area, where the 80% people were already having the antibodies from natural infection. So I saw Sri Lanka was almost a baseline. And after the vaccine rollout in say 21, and these cases increased and the deaths have increased. Similarly, Sri Lanka I saw. Then similar phenomena I saw in Malaysia. after the vaccine rollout. So that makes us worry whether it is due to any either waning immunity of the vaccine, or another thing they say is people become careless after they get the vaccine. They mix more. It may be that. I mean, but Japan did not have a lockdown. Japan was also having almost less than in India deaths.
Do you want to show some graphics?
Yes, I can show that graphs. Japan also, after the vaccination, they are not faring so well.
Oh, really? Wait a moment. I'll make it big. No, this is the wrong document. Sorry.
No, this is.
Yeah, but I had it as a PDF somewhere. One moment. Sorry. This is certainly wrong. Yeah.
Oh, this is the one. This is, I think, Japan.
Yes. I don't know. Can
this
move.
is Japan.
Yes.
This is the.
Make it a bit bigger.
Oh. So before March 2021, the cases were almost baseline. After they rolled out the vaccine in March, April, and then May, and now it has got one of the highest vaccination coverage, 79% coverage in Japan, where they don't have any vaccine mandate. They educate the people. They never had lockdown. You see the cases started spiking, then now it is spiking. Either the immunity is coming down. So before vaccine, baseline, after, and then this is the deaths in Japan. So they had high deaths, of course, but after the vaccine also, it didn't, almost symmetrical. I mean, you expect the deaths to come down. If you claim that vaccine prevent deaths, at the population level, you should see the big picture is not, and now the deaths has spiked compared to pre-vaccine era.
But tell me, I don't understand. When did they really only roll it out in April? Because in Germany, they started to vaccinate in December 2020.
Germany, they started, UK was the first country in December.
Yes.
It's in
beginning of January, let's say.
We saw the UK figure also. We can show that.
Oh yeah, you want to go?
UK also we are having the similar type. Even
this is Singapore. Sorry, I make it a bit
Singapore
small.
also we are having the same.
Here is UK. Here is Singapore. So what should we look at first?
Yeah.
UK. I make it big. One moment. Here we are.
This is the UK.
Ah, I see.
See, UK December they rolled out the vaccine. After vaccine, there is a spike which is higher than the pre-vaccination spike.
But again, these are the numbers which are also a bit falsified, as we don't trust.
Look here, Robert. One thing is there. Yeah. These numbers we don't trust. These numbers also we don't trust. We are using the same methods.
Yes. So you can compare.
Compare.
This is how you think as a scientist.
That's epidemiologist has to improvise, no?
Yeah, exactly.
We have to whatever data is available.
Yes. Okay.
So that is why these comparisons matter more.
Yeah.
Okay. The same country I am comparing. Yeah. Earlier you can say here data Africa is less better data in Europe. Yeah. Here it is I am comparing UK with UK. Yeah. If they are using one method, the same methods they are using now, and they are having you see after the vaccine the spike, and then again it may. What happens is that those who are vulnerable who die, they can't die second time. So after and then many people, even if it spreads, many people develop natural immunity. Yes. And therefore it comes down on its own after causing the harm. Mm-hmm. And there are other countries also. I can.
So I make it small again.
Singapore is also having the same problem.
Singapore is here.
You see, this is the vaccine rollout.
Oh, I see. Okay.
64%. This is the.
So here.
No, this is USA. USA is also having same problem.
Sorry, I was wrong.
In fact, I had a panel with Knut Witkowski of USA. He said these vaccines are not working. He is very blunt. Knut.
Who said this?
Knut Witkowski.
Knut Witkowski. Yeah, sure.
I was a couple of panels with him.
Yeah. Oh, really? Where was it?
Macmillan, Philip Macmillan's panic. I will send you the links.
He's from the Rockefeller Institute in New York City. So we are German-born.
Yeah. We are in touch. In fact, we have been on a couple of panels together. Three panels together.
I see.
I will send you the links.
He's very cool. He has this straight way of saying.
Straight way, never misses word. And we clicked also.
I see. Oh, this is impressive. So you have like no cases beforehand, and then you have a lot of cases.
This is Singapore.
See,
I mean, how do you justify population level mass immunization with this data which a high school student can see? I mean, these are just pictorial. And this is data in the public domain. This is from Worldometer and this is from the vaccine tracker. Both are available in the public domain.
I don't know. And do they have the vaccine is mandatory in Singapore, isn't it?
Except in Japan, where it is not mandatory, but they have the highest intake.
Yeah, sure. Because maybe
they have a faith. They have a faith in the authority.
They trust, exactly. They trust in the authority of the state.
Yes.
And so that doesn't need to be mandatory.
Doesn't need to be mandatory.
Yeah, I see. Wow, this is really impressive. I mean, this is like the most impressive graph.
You can see other countries. I have whatever country I have seen.
This is USA?
USA, see. These are the cases. Cases in USA. And this must
Wait a moment, I make it small so it's easier to see.
This is my cases. This must be the deaths. This was the deaths. This was the cases.
I see. Amazing.
And this was, I think, this is
Israel.
Sri Lanka. I keep track of Sri Lanka, neighboring country.
Yes, this is good.
You see, it was almost cases were baseline before the vaccine. After the vaccine, cases are surged. See, these deaths. So I was really surprised at Sri Lanka because every time I used to compare it with India, it was doing so well.
So what is wait, I have to understand this. Trends of COVID deaths in Sri Lanka?
After the vaccine, deaths are more. The same cases are more. These are the cases in Sri Lanka.
Cases, death. Okay, let's look at the death curve because this is always more important, I would say, because you cannot fake a death. Not so easily, at least. Wow.
And whatever limitations in data quality is before same country, before and after the policy. Now,
so there's a testing here too?
The testing and whatever for deaths as well as for cases. They didn't change the policy. Now I think gradually, now they are saying no need to test now because they are finding it embarrassing that so many deaths are occurring. Maybe that reason.
So I mean this...
and as an epidemiologist...
So here's the story of you're vaccinated, you're risking more.
I mean population level, as an epidemiologist, I don't see individual, I see population. So I am not happy with the health of the population after vaccination. I mean the data is there or somebody has to explain to me what's happening. Whatever, that is for the deaths. But if I am seeing the bigger picture, I see something which is...
But in the bigger picture, you have also to see whether there
disturbing.
are more people dying altogether. Can you say this? Whether there are more people dying altogether?
Maybe that because the other health conditions were neglected during the lockdown.
You might know Professor Kubantner in Germany. He made a study seeing the overall death. He took the numbers from Professor Fenton in London, and then he adapted it also to the German numbers. And he found out that the vaccine rollout, and especially the booster, that you can see it in the overall mortality of the region where the booster has been implemented. And the peak of the plus mortality is different in Berlin than in Munich, according to when the booster has been rolled out. So there's a very strong correlation, not even like this, but it's really like the week where the booster is rolled out, you have more people dying than average. And this, we had a narrative together some weeks ago, and this was very impressive to me, and I think it had also an impact on the vote. The German parliament voted now against the mandatory vaccine. It's a very recent decision, and I wonder what this will lead to. And other people fear that maybe through the European Union, mandatory vaccine in Europe will be implemented anyway, or it will come back again. But I mean, this is so clear; it cannot be clearer.
It is just putting these things are lying for everyone to see, scattered. I have just put it together, and it is telling a story.
Thank you for this work. And what does it make? What does it tell about our society?
I think what is happening is we are losing out on the art of medicine, art of public health, where you have all these things, judgment. Now everybody is looking at, virologist looking at that virus, clinician is seeing that and from distance. they are not adding up together. When you just stand aside, like art requires something which you can't explain. So they are just trying to explain things in a scientific way, where medicine, because there is a lot of human variations. And another thing which I find very, very wrong in this pandemic, this mass vaccine rollout was never done for a disease with 0.1 mortality or 1% mortality. There are so many diseases we have got, particularly in poor countries, 5-10% mortality, even with treatment. So that was one thing. Secondly, it is still under experimental use authorization. Experiment should have a control group. Yes. If you are giving a mass vaccination, where is your control group? Who has ethically cleared such a study without a control group? Even small studies, you require a randomized trial. You could have randomized some communities in each country to get the vaccine, some countries not to get, and then compared. Now here it will be very difficult. They will say, no, it may be due to COVID, they had a prior, whatever, they will try to cover up due to other disease. Like this, deaths are due to other diseases, like many people did not have proper treatment, cancers were neglected, heart disease were neglected. So this spurt may be due to that and incidental, the same they will use what we are trying to use. As a misdiagnosis, they will use the same and get away with it. But if you have a control group, some communities given vaccine, others not given vaccine, and then you can compare, it would be very clear. Because it is an experiment, so you should have a control group and experiment. So they have, I would say they don't want that strong evidence. In the court of law, it is tampering with data. I told Advocate Oja that don't leave any evidence for you to.
Wow, yeah, but this sounds like premeditation. Yeah, and
yeah, I'm not happy with. Whatever it is done in a very amateurish fashion. Amateurish fashion, like we have a lockdown first 2 weeks so that hospitals are not overwhelmed. Then okay, the vaccine is coming. Now just extend it. We have a vaccine and then people will come out. And now vaccine has come. We had a lockdown for 2 years. Schools were closed. And now we have lost everything. Now vaccine is also not. And now we are spending on boosters. India has spent, I think, 135,000 crores on vaccines for COVID, and they are trying to vaccinate the children, where not a single, perhaps, child has died of COVID in this past 2 years, a healthy child. And as I said, 2,000 children are dying of other diseases. Yes. Spend money on that if you are really concerned about child. And another very important thing, as you were saying, in September 2021, they did a sero survey in Delhi. They found 82% of below 18 years, they were already having antibodies. That means the virus has run through the child population. And now the CDC has considered, after 2 years, reluctantly rather, grudgingly, that natural immunity is as robust as vaccine-induced immunity. And so many studies are there, Israeli studies and other studies.
It's even like, what was it, 27 times more?
27 and more robust.
More robust than any vaccine.
If a person has recovered from natural infection, that person has taken 25 boosters, because first and second is the first 27 times more, first two means first 2 doses, and then 25 boosters. Why the hell does he require a single dose of vaccine? Scientifically speaking.
Yes.
So that shows some, things are not.
You are a scientist with a lot of experience, and you worked on other communicable diseases. I have
investigated respiratory outbreaks. I have investigated pneumococcal, German measles, typhoid outbreaks in different parts. I know how it works. And this type of amateur at a global level, it's something which I sometimes feel is a dream or something. This so much of Yeah,
it is. It must have been, certainly a shock therapy for the common lawman, but then you have the experts, then you have these scientists.
I am really surprised. Some of the experts I talk to, they are either very shy of talking out, or they are not very confident because of the strong institutions like WHO, CDC, and giving some guidelines. And as I said, now everybody is a specialist now. All my colleagues are specialists. A person is a surgeon, he is operating. Person is a eye specialist, he is not bothered. WHO has said that is the guideline. And the public health people like us don't know whom to talk to, because we...
Yes, I mean, the world's most established specialists published the Great Barrington Declaration quite early on. When was
they
it?
were called as
autumn.
fringe epidemiologists.
Yes. No, yes, no, they're on the fringe.
Oh, on the fringe.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
so who is in the center? That is the real question.
I think the people also are, I mean, now the real life is, I think there was a movie or something, Contagion or something, which was on that.
Contagion, yes, in 2014 it was.
Some people told me to see the movie, I didn't see it.
But yeah, people told me the same. It was seemingly the first movie ever where it's a virus catastrophe movie.
And the vaccine comes and everything is safe, something like that.
Exactly. And the interesting part is it's the first movie ever where people who have no symptoms are dangerous. So you have this narrative of a normal, healthy person is dangerous.
Psyche of the masses. I think the masses are primed with such movies, and medicine and public health is glamorized through these movies, and they think the real life is like the movies. And the people are also complying, and I think most of the, as you said, doctors who are not in public health, they are also glamorized. And they also must be seeing such movies and giving such direction. I mean, it's not actual practical public health.
It's a very fascinating, for me as a filmmaker, it's a very fascinating narrative because, you know, you're feeling completely healthy, you are completely healthy, and then a test can make you ill and make you fear for your life. And I just said, okay, this wasn't that movie in Contagion, but this was also with AIDS. You remember that the narrative is everybody in this room could have AIDS. You don't know it. But if you have a PCR test and it's positive, you will die soon. And it's true that you will die. And you have to be afraid. You can get it. Pay attention and so on and so forth. So I wonder whether AIDS was important for the general public to understand that a healthy person can in fact be not healthy. What do you think about this?
For AIDS, it was a different because it required intimate contact. Yes. So the respiratory virus is because anybody can spread it without intimate contact.
Yes.
So that fear factor
is more frightening. It's more frightening.
More frightening first.
Yes, I completely agree.
And that's one thing. And another thing, like as we were talking, it's in that context of different countries, highly dense countries, like. Another unscientific thing was the lockdown was unscientific in other ways also. Lockdown, when you lock down people in India, Pakistan or Bangladesh, they are very small houses. You have more crowding. When they are working in the open. They work vendors. Yes. They are street vendors. Outside the transmission is negligible. Yes. If you push them indoors, 10 people staying in a room, so many people sharing toilet facilities, you are causing more crowding.
Yes.
So, and don't step outdoors. That was the caller tune. Outdoors is safest. But now, and wear mask when you go outdoors. You require mask indoors, if at all, that is. So much unscientific things going on. Yes. And
so it also this seems like ideas coming from some powerful people in the West have been implemented to the Indian society. It sounds like this.
Yeah. It sounds like that ideas coming from authorities, from government. I have talked to my own professionals. I was going for a morning walk and he was my old colleague. He was a head of a microbiologist earlier. In early morning walk, 7 o'clock, he is wearing a mask up to his eyes. A tall person like you. I'm looking at him and say, why you are wearing a mask? Bolta, no, droplet and all. I'm like, you are so tall, you will throw droplet on me and nobody can throw droplet at you. It is not physically possible. But why you are taking, and you are a microbiologist, I said. You know the size of a virus is size of this. So why you are wearing mask? Then he says government orders. And like, you are a scientist, you should challenge the government. So what happens is we may be that type of society, like we don't challenge authority. So government is authority. In most of the societies, Asian societies, African society, I don't know what African, but the head of the family is final. So when you leave the family also, the government takes the place of head of the family. You can't question. I mean, this is my personal idea. So I was not a good child. I can keep questioning my father. I could keep questioning the government. I say, as a scientist, it is your duty to advise the government.
I mean, for me, it's a matter of what society you want to live in. Would you consider India a democracy?
It is democracy on paper. It is democracy, but I feel democracy has to be, it should start from the family. Like you give freedom to your family members, to your child. You can communicate with them, get the ideas. Then only you can have a vibrant democracy. If you are accustomed to authority, I think in the family, if you are accustomed to authority, I am not saying he rebel unnecessarily. He was saying that his son is rebelling against him. I said, if there's a proper reason, as a head of the family, if you can reason with your child, and if you may change your opinion if that child convinces you, then I think you can become a better citizen for a democratic.
For me, also, it's
I think
if you cannot challenge authority, if there's no room for debate, there's a risk that you don't do the best decisions.
Yeah.
Because you don't consider all perspectives.
That's I keep a quote of Napoleon Bonaparte on my table. Napoleon Bonaparte said that the people to fear are not those who disagree with you, but those who disagree with you but are too afraid to tell you so.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, many leaders brought up in that authoritarian mold take disagreement as a disrespect. We shouldn't be like that. So I think it all adds up.
I wonder, I mean, we have on our website, oval.media, we have a video called Monopoly. And it describes who owns what company, and it shows, in fact, that big investment companies own the majority share in most big companies. So that, in fact, all bigger companies are owned by the same people, or at least the decision in terms of investment are made by the very few people for most companies. So this was very impressive to see for me, because it showed so clearly how interconnected everything is. And this was for me also a help to understand how absurd actions can be taken simultaneously around the globe.
Yeah.
It gives a certain, strength to an action. If everybody's doing it in the world, you think it must be right.
Yeah. That's people with, I would say, lack of original thinking or lack of self-assurance. They like to go with the group. Because I have seen in my own department, I never wore a mask these 2 years. So gradually no one wears a mask in my department.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
But the next department, everybody wears a mask.
I see.
So they get reassured that he is moving around without a mask, so he is still alive. So
and you're an epidemiologist,
and all this analysis I have been doing with them, my colleagues and my students.
Yeah.
So they are analyzing it. So they have, I think, got the insight. And so again, maybe it is groupthink in a different way, because I am the head of the department.
Yes.
So that perhaps the authoritarian is working in that way.
Yes, I see. But how can you encourage critical thinking?
I keep telling them.
Yeah.
Like I told, that Guru Purnima we have every day where they pay respect to the teacher. It's an occasion. Guru means the teacher. Purnima means the teacher or some birthday of some great teacher. So when they come and touch my feet, I said, don't touch my feet. Try to question me. Then develop your thing. What I say, you don't take it blindly. I want some different view. So that is actual respect to the Guru. You use your own thinking. So, but that has to be at a larger scale.
Sure.
The societal influences also plays a part.
And is this the reason why you wrote this book? I just want to quote it. It's called COVID-19 Pandemic, A Third Eye. Why is it called A Third Eye?
A third eye in Indian mythology is a god has got a third eye, which sees things in a clear way. I am not a very religious person, but what about little I know about some god in Indian mythology had a third eye, I think. कौन गॉड था? विष्णु, विष्णु भगवान था, किनका थर्ड आई था? Brahma is a god who has got an extra capacity and third eye, and it was something somebody suggested to me, third eye, and it helped me also, because that time I was also having a problem with my own second eye. I had a retinal detachment. So which I had to go major surgery. I have acknowledged the retinal surgeons also. So I thought, okay, now let me use my third eye. So the third eye means enlightenment comes from the third eye of God. And third eye, I also took it as a third empire. In cricket, you have two empires and a third empire who is watching everything in a detached manner, without any conflict of interest or without any career interest. Another thing I have noticed here, why this, you see, as you said, everybody is complying, why the scientists are not questioning. Many scientists are actually getting conflict of interest does not mean any monetary gains. It may be just career gains. Like if I am getting grant for research in COVID, treatment, vaccines, large number of vaccine trials are started all over the country in medical college. So you are getting some research grant and it advises. So you don't, your eyes are not there. You can't use your third eye. So third eye means I am at a age when I don't have to bother about my career. So I can look in a detached manner. So I use that word third eye. Like you're above all that.
I see. That makes complete sense. The distance is important for understanding.
Distance,
yeah. If you're too much into the game.
Yeah. And I don't blame them. I don't blame my colleagues who are not seeing it, because they are at a too lower level to understand what's happening at the bigger level. In fact, I also did not suspect. I started suspecting something is not all right when the natural immunity was not denied by everyone. I mean, the authorities, the WHO and all. I mean, it was not directly denied, but the doubt was created. Even after recovery, after 2 weeks of recovering from natural infection, you can take the vaccine. Why should you take a vaccine after recovering from? And that too, a vaccine for which you don't know the long term. I mean, even forget about the side effect. I keep saying, forget about side effect. How much investment you are doing when 80% of the country has already developed natural infection, which is robust, 27 times more stronger. Why waste money on vaccines? Forget about the side effect. And in a country where people are dying of other diseases, with this money could be help in controlling those diseases.
And this book is addressing regular people?
Yeah, this started as a column. I was offered to write weekly columns and in one of the national dailies, National Herald. So I used to write weekly columns, then fortnightly. Then once the columns, I started getting good feedback as well as bad feedbacks because it is reflecting the polarization of the whole issue.
Is India very divided about this issue?
Yeah, divided in the sense 70-30. Like 30% people do not believe the main narrative. I think they did a recent survey. 70% believe it. Because I think that 70% are the upper class. 30% who have gone through it, they have to work with their hands, they see it. I talk to my cab driver, I talk to my, so they know what's happening. And I took permission from National Herald because after I got good feedbacks. And therefore I said, then they kindly gave me permission to bring it out a collection. So this is addressed to the common man, common person. And these are as far as possible with facts and figures.
Yes, we will definitely publish it in our bookshop too.
It is available through Amazon. I don't know whether you get it.
And here are
drawings are made by Professor Raman of IIT Mumbai.
Yeah, Professor Raman, with whom we also had a narrative.
Yeah. I took his permission also. He used to keep making those sketches
Yeah.
So I said, can I use your sketches? So he was kind enough to.
Wonderful. Yes, but let's talk about the future. I mean, what do you think, where will all this lead to? The good thing for me is, coming from Germany, is that we have a completely different situation now, because the narrative is dominated by the fear from Russia. Okay. So this is what it's all about now. Since the hot war in the east of Ukraine, the media completely switched from Corona to war with Russia. So, so here in India, the war is certainly in the media, but I understood it's not as strongly reported and not so polemically. Is this correct?
I think it is not we are not feeling the heat of war as yet. But I think we may be facing an economic crisis, like Sri Lanka is facing. I don't know, perhaps we may be able to cushion it, being a big country. But the concern would be now getting out of the collateral harm. Many people have lost their employment. Many people have been pushed below the poverty line. So I am concerned about that. Child malnutrition will increase. Already India has got one of the highest rates of child malnutrition. And as I said, child deaths. 2,000 children die daily, and there were some predictions that 3,000 to 4,000 may die because of this. And of course, the fear, people have to come out of the fear, because every day, and I am concerned that the ground might have been ripened for a future false alarm. I would call this a false alarm, because as far as disease and public health, we also weigh the disease mortality, compare it with other diseases. As I said, we have got so many other mortalities, from typhoid, from tuberculosis, from dengue. So, where we are going for a disease which has got very low impact on our population. So, I am worried that in future also, because respiratory viruses keep coming and keep going. So, I am worried about that. We require, we have to educate the people.
Yes.
That so that we are prepared for the prepared in the sense not to again go into a caves, to not go into a caves. We are prepared to question the authorities.
And did your work for the army help you to analyze the current situation?
To some extent, not I would say large extent, because army, again, we have got a very small population. So we have got a very controlled population. The outbreaks were regional outbreaks, so not. But army, of course, it helped me understand immunology. It helped me understand how outbreaks spread on a small scale, and how to. But what helped me was seeing everything from a global canvas. Of course, it had trained me on a small scale that the same outbreak can behave differently in different people, differently. So, which made me extrapolate it on a global scale.
I see. I see.
And the patterns were very, very stark from the very beginning. If you see, even now the same patterns persist in spite of.
Could you explain, please?
The patterns means the differences in impact. The Western countries already always had a higher, 10 times higher impact than the Asian and African countries. At the beginning of the pandemic and 1.5 years into the pandemic. That means all the measures made by different governments, it might have had very modest impact, if at any. I mean, these pandemics, first time in human history, humans tried to control natural forces. Pandemic has to run out. And ultimately now they have to concede that it is the naturally acquired immunity which is making the pandemic die out. The vaccines, if you see the data, it is not very reassuring, the effect of vaccine. I mean, it is quite disappointing at the population level.
I see. So what would you recommend a normal citizen to do in these days? How can he or she have orientation?
Normal citizens, like in India, I am very sure that 80-90% of the young people, because young people move out more, even schools were closed, but they were playing, they were mixing, and children do not have. Normal people should carry out their normal duties, which they should have done from the beginning only. So at least they can do now. And those who are elderly, those who are frail, they should take extra precaution. They may be vaccinated also on the advice of the personal physician. Getting vaccinated, may take booster also on the advice of the personal physician. Because it is not like one size fits all. Everybody may not require. Only a person with a higher risk, and that goes in favor of risk benefit, because a person who is elderly and all, his or her chance of dying from COVID is much more. So even if there are any vaccine adverse effects, it's a well balanced risk. But in a child who has got no risk of dying from COVID, even one child dies, it is a one death too many.
Of course. However, if the vaccine is only working for 8 weeks,
then it requires more research.
Why would an old person need to take it, considering that it also lowers the overall immunity?
That he or she is got right to make an informed decision, yes, or be a study participant. And these studies, focus studies, can only be done on small sample, not on mass rollout. You do mass rollout vaccination, and even the results are, as I have shown in the graphs, they don't indicate that they are working at the population level. So they should stop the trial. These are even small trials, the stopping rules are there. If things are not working, you stop it. Then do it on a small sample and see why it is not working.
But is the general opinion on vaccines in India very positive?
I think by and large, few people are very positive of vaccine. Others are, because they indirectly make it impossible to travel without vaccine, to otherwise every time you do RT-PCR. Then many employers are coercing, so they come ask me also what to do. On the central government has given an affidavit in Supreme Court that vaccines are mandatory, but they are indirect pressures.
Yes, of course. Yeah. No, I meant because I was wondering.
I am using the same thing. I am trying to promote my book. I tell my students that you have to buy this book when you come to me. But of course, I said this is not mandatory. It's voluntary. But it is good if you buy it. When you come to get your copy signed. So it's an indirect coercion character. So I am using the same methods to promote my book also.
I see. You learn from the
marketing.
Other side. It's not more than marketing, coercion marketing.
So that's how. And then there is peer pressure also. And then there are incentives also. That they get some, all those incentives from people working in software industries, other industries, they get some coupon to purchase something, some gift. So there are that type of marketing.
Yeah, sure. Very interesting. So what is your prediction for the future? Can you tell whether there will be a new, very dangerous virus for once, or do you think people are too tired from this pandemic talk and they want to go back to normal? The question I have with this is, will there be a continuous state of emergency in India? What is your prediction?
I don't think, because people are now moving around. If you see, I got caught in a traffic jam. So earlier I used to get very depressed in a traffic jam. Now I feel very excited in a traffic jam. Things are going to normal. so that's a good sign.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. I also thank the audience for assisting to our conversation. Oval Media depends on the audience because we only live from donations from the audience and nobody else. We have no third-party interests, no fund, public, private partners or whatever who are supporting us. So it's really fundamental for us to have your help so that we can continue helping each other to understand the world. And I am very honored that I could have this conversation. Thank you so much,
Robert. It's a pleasure, Robert. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Just take one snap. मेरे कैमरा से प्रोफेशनल हैंड.
Yes.
मेरा मोबाइल से. Just.
Yeah. So have a good day. Goodbye.